Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Board Games Hitting My Table. So in this series I take a look at all of the non-new to me board games that I've been playing over the last couple of weeks. This episode is covering the second half of January 2023. Now before I get started on the games, as usual I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer when it comes to purchasing new board games here in the UK. And if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's start with the games. I'm going to start with probably the heavy hitter over the last couple of weeks, and this is Kaylas. So I played a 3-player game of Kaylas, which I happen to think is the optimal player count with this one. And if you're not aware of what Kaylas is, it's basically one of the original, if not the original, worker placement game. Very dry and dusty in the way it looks. And despite maybe at first glance it's seeming like a lot of other games out there where you are collecting resources, and in this game you are contributing to build a castle at the top here to get points, there are so many nuances and additional mechanisms that make this game, or take it above and beyond the rest of the games out there, because I truly think this game is phenomenal. Not just great, I think it's next level good. But yeah, you are essentially placing your workers or deploying them on these different buildings. So there's some fixed and there's some new ones as you're building as the game goes on. And then you're collecting resources. Again, you're building to the cathedral. You're getting better and better buildings as you go down. If people use your buildings, you get additional points. But I love, again, these wrinkles that come into play here, because there is quite a cool degree of tempo and kind of timing exercise that comes in here, because obviously these buildings are resolved in this track order. So if you are, say, triggering buildings before you actually have the resources to get them, then that's going to work against you and you'll have to plan for the next turn instead. And that is a very rookie mistake to make, but it does happen quite frequently. And we had a great game of this. I mean, I love my initial plays of this, but I was so happy to get it back to the table and really reinforce that this is one of the best games out there, and it has actually shot up my rankings. You know, my stock in this game has really risen following this new play. And we went for a very different strategy with this one. Like, one of my opponents went for lots of those quick grabs of points by maybe building buildings or just getting nice, cheap, easy grabs, and that really did pull them ahead. But one of us was kind of going for the castle here when nobody else was, so therefore you benefit from getting these king's favours, which are a really useful thing to exploit. And me myself was trying to go for these big kind of bursts in order to get my buildings down as quickly as possible, because if you go to one spot and you have the resources to do it multiple times, then you can make several kind of contributions. It is so well designed. I mean, I actually cannot find fault with it. I suppose the only nitpick I have is that it can run a little bit long. Not like this went too long. I think it was about maybe 90 to 100 minutes we took to play this one, and that was including a teach. But yeah, it would have been nicer if you can play it in 90 minutes precisely. But I think the gameplay more than warrants how long it takes, because it is such a rich and engrossing game. And yeah, it is absolutely phenomenal, and I cannot advocate this one enough if you like worker placement and you like Euros. So yeah, needless to say, this one went down a treat. So that is Kaylas. I also played a 3 and 4 player game of Scout, so becoming a regular favourite on the channel. Very simple little shedding game, really cool mechanisms as you cannot manipulate the cards in your hand. Which is a really nice breezy game with some intelligence used as well. You're probably familiar with this one, so I won't beat the drum anymore. But yeah, still a great game. That is Scout. Talking about regular favourites, we played a 3-player game of Rumble Nation. Definitely not a widely known game, but if you watch my content regularly, you probably know that I'm a big fan of this one and advocate it strongly. But this is a simple area majority game, as you're deploying these pieces or your colours down on this map here by rolling dice. So you're going to roll 3 dice. 2 of them are going to show which region you're going to deploy into, and the other one is going to show how many cubes you put into those regions. And as soon as you're out of cubes, you are going to take one of these kind of finishing markers, which means that you'll break ties the sooner that you get rid of your cubes. And that's actually a really important decision in this game, because tie breaking can be massive. And once all your cubes are deployed, you're going to go from the lowest value region up to the highest value region and start dishing out points accordingly. But if you are the strongest player, then you'll kind of spit out these reinforcement cubes into the adjacent regions. And that creates this massive cascading effect and adds some really cool strategy into the game, because you can plan ahead, you know, that if I win this region, I'll probably win this one and then win this one and so on. And, you know, my record in this game is absolutely awful. I don't think I've ever won a game of it. But this most recent play was probably the closest I've come to winning, and it was a very close game, split between the three of us, and it all came down to that final 12 region, which is the highest point one, and one of my opponents won that unanimously. There was no competition to it, meaning that they got the 12 points and nobody got the runner-up 6 points, which was the kind of deal breaker in this one. But this is probably one of the best games you can play in 20 or 30 minutes. Yeah, if you don't know about this one, definitely check it out, because I'm pretty sure you will like it. We played a 4-player game of Moorland Arosa. So this is a game I very rarely talk about on the channel, actually. I think I've only played it 1 or 2 times before this play. And, you know, talking about unique games, this one might be one of the most unique games I've ever played. But sadly, that's not in a good way, because this game is pretty damn awful. I think I rate it a 2 out of 10. So in this one, you are essentially dropping cubes into this 3D structure here, and you are, well, basically the mechanism of the game is you trying to guess how far down this tower that your cube has fallen. But this game is massively flawed, because a lot of the time when you're putting cubes in the tower, they get stuck in level 7 or level 6, and it's very easy to guess who's fallen in there, and it becomes just funny due to how bad it is. And basically you are trying not to be discovered by the other players, and stuff like that. But yeah, very silly. Honestly, I cannot recommend this one, despite it being unique. And, I do give it respect for being unique and trying something different. But I think, there is no saving this one. It is absolutely abysmal. So that is Moorland Arosa. After a long delay, I played a game of Arboretum. So this one might be one of the most kind of mood-dependent games that I have, because despite being a very beautiful game, as you can see here, this is a ferocious game that is hyper-competitive and very cutthroat. And what you're trying to do in this game is you're managing this hand of 7 cards, and you are placing these cards down in kind of a tableau in front of you in like a puzzle fashion, where you're trying to create these chains or roots of the same tree types, beginning and ending in the same tree, but they have to go in kind of, in numerical order, but you can chain through other trees as well. Quite a weird mechanism and a little bit confusing, I suppose, at first glance. But the twist on this game is that you actually only score for the trees and runs where you have the highest value still remaining in your hand. So what that means is you can deliberately hoard cards in your hand just to stop other people scoring their cards. And that is what happened in this game, which is fully expected, where I was going for some different tree types. I was doing quite well with them, and I saw this opportunity where I picked up a couple of cards and built a chain which just completely piggybacked off my existing network. And I thought if I managed to pull that one off by having the most cards in my hand, that I probably would have won the game. But my opponent picked up on that and managed to hoard just enough to stop me from scoring it, and they ended up getting the win. But it's an ultra clever game. I mean, it is truly great, a really great card game. But yeah, it comes out of, or gets pulled off the shelf few and far between. But when I do pull it off, I do enjoy it. So that is Arboretum. Next up, we have Viceroy. So this is kind of a medium weight, I suppose you could call it a euro, as you're building this pyramid of cards here. Blind bidding with these gems to acquire them. And then depending on how far you build them up this pyramid, you're going to get more and more rewards. So again, another game I've praised quite a lot over the years. I do like it a lot. I'm starting to think that maybe my time with Viceroy has come to an end now. I've played it quite a few times. I've explored all the different strategies, and there is a lot of them. There's lots of different scoring types. And generally speaking, this is another game I don't do too well on, because I tend to bite off a bit more than I can chew. But in this particular game, I tried to keep it simple and just go for straight up points at face value. And that paid off way better than it had before. I don't think it got me the win, but it nearly did. And I really like the mechanisms here. I have got the expansion material in here, which I haven't really used, or at least not used much of it. I've used these kind of like wild gems and things, but maybe it's getting a bit too much for me to sort through. And Again, I think I'm quite content with where I'm at here. I think if I play Viceroy much more, then maybe my appreciation of it will start to fall off. So maybe it's time for me to move on from Viceroy, but I've had a really great time with it. And it's still a solid and very much underrated and underappreciated game. So that is Viceroy. Also played a 4-player game of Botswana, a very simple commodity speculation game, just playing cards out in front of you, collecting these animals, and depending on the most recent card played of an animal type is how much those animals are worth. I think we only played 1 round of this, so very quick and snappy, just to finish off a games night. And yeah, it goes down well. I like it. Definitely no convolution in this one. Can explain it in a minute, and it's a good little filler just to to fill in those gaps. So that is Botswana. Another game here we haven't got to the table for a long time. This is Unusual Suspects. So this is a very strange party game, a very funny game actually, as you have this kind of grid of characters, lots of different characters here, and then every person is going to get given one of these question cards, except for one player, and then they're basically going to work together to try and deduce which character the one player who doesn't have a question card has in there, or what they know about. So basically they're trying to ask questions to try and eliminate characters so that the one right or correct character will remain. And these questions are quite interesting. Like you can see here, do they read novels? Do they spend a lot of time in the bathroom? These kind of things. So you've got to kind of make assumptions about these characters, work together, create a bit of a backstory and things. Very silly fun here, but it somehow works because the questions are quite obscure. And I think we played like 4 games of this back to back. Everybody being in the everyone being the kind of clue taker, I suppose. And for a game that comes out maybe once or twice a year, it always goes down a treat. And yeah, it's a nice one that anybody can play. And it creates some really good funny moments and actually quite interesting moments of discussion as well. So that is Unusual Suspects. On to the last few now then. So another game I haven't played for quite a while, but one that I definitely enjoy. This is QE. This is a game kind of inspired by a Reiner Knizia game called High Society, except this one you have no limits on what you can bid. And basically you are writing your bids down on these dry erase boards and bidding for these different kind of commodities or industries here, which work in a set collection fashion basically. So if you get all the different ones, you get points. If you get loads of the same ones, you get points. They've got points on the actual tiles themselves. And if you collect all the ones from your own country, you get more points, and so on. But it has that high society mechanism where if you spend the most money, then you will instantly be eliminated from the scoring at the end, and you'll have no opportunity to win. It works really well actually. You would think that this one would go off the rails, and sometimes it does if people throw in those really high bids, but it has an auto balancing system, because if somebody bids loads of money, then you know that everybody else kind of knows they have a bit of wiggle room where they can bid more. So it kind of inflates all the other players' bids as well. We had a good game of this one, and it came down to, I think it came right down to the last round, where there was one piece out there that I needed to win, at least in order to have a chance of winning, because I know I wasn't winning on points without winning that one. But unfortunately, if I wanted to win that bid, then I knew I was going to go above and beyond everybody else in terms of the money I spent. So I was kind of in a lose-lose situation. So I got trapped there, and one of my opponents actually ended up winning, who everybody else was kind of sure they spent the most money, where in reality they did not. So it's definitely it's a difficult game to tally things in your head, and sometimes you get misled by people's bids. But yeah, such an interesting game. Again, it really does kind of walk that knife edge of being a party game, but being an economic game at the same time. So it fits that really nice niche. And yeah, definitely a fan of this one. So that is QE. We played a 3-player game of Can't Stop, classic push your luck game by Sid Saxon, and I do like this game a lot actually. It's a very cool game. It can be very funny, especially if you play with the right people. You're just trying to roll these dice, create different kind of numbers, and then climb up the mountain the more you roll them. But if you end up not rolling one of those numbers, then you go bust and you fall back to your last kind of saved checkpoint. Now, I like everything about this game. The only thing I don't like about it is that it goes too long. Every single time I play this one, it takes way longer than it should. I think it's because you have no interaction when it's not your turn. Now, I'm kind of interested in maybe house ruling this in a way, or if there's a way of doing it where everybody can play simultaneously. So maybe everyone rolls at the same time and then decides if they want to stop or go on, and so on. Therefore, you are kind of taking everyone's turn at the same time, and you're basically, well, you're half or even or more than half the game length, and I think it'll work. Maybe I've not found a pitfall there, but it's a good game. I think Rapido is better than it because it does everything that Can't Stop does, but it does it faster and it's more interactive. But hey, you know, it's still a good one, and I think it deserves a place in the collection. But yeah, I think it does need speeding up. So that is Can't Stop. And the final game I'm talking about is a 4-player game of Miyabi. So this is a kind of another underappreciated Michael Kiesling tile placement game. As you're placing these tiles out on your little map here, when you place these tiles down, they all have these symbols on, but these symbols can only go in each column once per round. And it has this layering system where the more you place these tiles higher and higher on top of each other, the bigger multipliers you get. And then there are these special rules as well, which will kind of mess with the scoring, such as, you know, having the most of a symbol in a row, having the most connecting symbols, having empty spaces. There are all different ways you can tailor scoring depending on what you want to do. If you want to add more rules in, if you want to take more rules out, it's completely up to you. And we had actually a really close game here, like definitely 4 players, equal skill, literally a few points in it, and it all came down to one player. I believe it came down, or definitely played a big factor, is that somebody managed to connect all of their pieces together for a big endgame scoring multiplier there, or big endgame scoring. Whereas myself, I did quite well, but there was one piece that didn't quite fit in the right space to add up my 2 clusters of logos together. And if that did happen, I probably had a shot of winning, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. But I really like this one. This is a great family weight game by Haber. Definitely thinky, but not complex, and just interesting design. So if you like puzzly tile placement games, then Miyabi is definitely a good one. And that's it. That's all the games that I've been playing. Hopefully it's given you an idea here, and it goes to show which games have some legs and longevity and remain to hit the table. So if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.